Don't sleep on these guys to be big-time performers for the Sun Devils in 2024.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. Thanks as always for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. And of course, a special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Wherever you're getting those podcasts, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. You can stay in touch with that content by following me on Twitter. You can find me at RichieBrads36 and the podcast as well at LO_Sun Devils. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. Today, we are going to be taking a look at the offensive players that you might not know or maybe don't realize how important they are to the team's success in 2024. Don't worry, I'm going to make sure that you know who they are. We're going to highlight some other guys as well that you may not know. If you missed yesterday's episode, that was talking about the big names, such as Jaden Rashada and Elijhah Badger, and you want to know more about them, check out yesterday's episode. Today, like I said, these are guys that are kind of under the radar. You may not even know who some of these guys are, but don't worry, I'll get you up to speed. We're going to go ahead and talk about the guys who do the dirty work along the offensive line, and especially on the interior. That is going to be Leif Fautanu at center and Ben Coleman at guard. We'll start with Fautanu, who was, for the most part, the healthiest offensive lineman last year. He dealt with some nicks and injuries, banged up throughout the season, but he was the most reliable guy for the Sun Devils on a weekly basis when it came to the injuries. He also was a rock-solid player, and the Sun Devils were trying to replace Ben Scott, who had been the team center in 2023. He, of course, 2022, He transferred out, went to Nebraska, couldn't tell you what he did there, but they were trying to find a replacement for him. And prior to that, they had, oh my God, of course, I'm not going to be able to remember his name. He had Kellen Deesh and one other guy. He signed with the Niners previously. Of course, I can't remember his name. But you had decent stability at the center spot for the last couple of years. You needed to find your replacement for them. And Fautanu came over to the program from UNLV, and there was plenty of hope and expectations for him to be able to be the plug-and-play center, and I would say he lived up to it. I look at Leif Fautanu as one of the more important offensive linemen. The thing is, he just plays center, and center is a very unsexy spot, I suppose is what you could call it. Like, when you talk about the offensive line, everybody immediately goes to left tackle, which is why I talked about Bram Walden yesterday as one of the more important guys along the offensive line. However, having a good center is going to be one of the most important spots for you, especially with a young quarterback in Jaden Rashada. Having a guy who's going to be able to help identify the defense for the team is pivotal. And when you have somebody who's able to do that, it just helps everybody mesh together a little bit more consistently. So you have a quarterback that's able to help read a defense a little more. You have an offensive line that is built from the interior and all the way outside. So you can have good tackle play and everything, but a lot of really good offensive lines typically have really good centers. And Fautanu has showed me that he has the ability to be a really good center. So he's probably near the top of my list here for the most overlooked Sun Devils on this team right now. I really, really like Fautanu, and I value him quite a bit. As long as he plays well this year, I think you're going to see the offensive line as a unit play much better than we have in recent years. But another offensive lineman here is Ben Coleman. He's a guard. He transferred from Cal. He had some really good success there where he was paving the way for Jaden and some of the more productive players that Cal has had. And obviously Jaden is definitely near the top of that as one of the best running backs for my money, potentially in the country. Like, he's top 20, I would say. You could flirt with him a little bit higher. He's really good. He's going to play on Sundays, but Ben Coleman was a huge reason for some of that success. There was a game where he helped Jaden run for 274 yards as a freshman, and Ben Coleman was one of the guys who was paving the way for that kind of game and for that kind of success. You missed him last year. Ben Coleman had missed the year with injury, and unfortunately, you really felt the lack of presence along the offensive line, because I believe that when Ben Coleman came to the university that he was potentially the team's best offensive lineman, and you didn't even get to find out last year. He should be 100% healthy, and if he is 100% healthy, to me, it's between him and Fautanu for biggest plug-and-play guys. I'm obviously a huge Bram Walden guy. I think Bram Walden could be plug-and-play, but I also would not be surprised if the competition along the offensive line is, and especially the offensive tackle position, is so active, I guess, that Walden might be put on the back burner, I suppose. Wouldn't surprise me. It's just a very fluid situation. Nobody should, in theory, have their position locked up along the offensive line. Not Fautanu, not Coleman, not Walden, not anybody else should have a solidified position. But if you're looking at the closest guys to it, I think it is between Fautanu and Coleman. And as long as Coleman is healthy, man, like, you really are getting a dog here. This is not a small dude. He's 6'3", 330 pounds. He moves really well. He plays to his size, and he's got that offensive guard mentality where, look, if you're new to football and you're looking along the offensive line, there are few positions on the team entirely, like either side of the ball, that play with the kind of tenacity and violence and just the grit, I suppose is what you could call it, that the offensive guard position does. Like, Ben Coleman is a tough SOB. He has that guard mentality of, I'm going to beat the you-know-what out of you for 60 minutes or more, and you're going to feel my impact. Plugging him into that offensive line with that mentality, you're going to see a drastic increase from what you saw last year. Ben Coleman's a stud. I'm curious if he was healthy and played 12 games for you last year. I'm curious how much better the offensive line plays. And also keep in mind that Kenny Dillingham runs a quick offense where the ball's getting out in 2 seconds, 3 seconds, which helps mitigate a banged up offensive line or even an underachieving offensive line. Plugging in Ben Coleman only helps you to be able to get the ball out quickly and effectively, so you're not rushing your throws necessarily. You're just running the offense the way that it's meant to be run, but also in a situation where you do have longer developing plays and you have like your play actions and your bootlegs and all that good stuff, is you have the guard play to be able to have consistency in the blocking and potentially high upside. That's where I'm at with Ben Coleman. I'm a very big Ben Coleman guy. So as long as he's healthy, I really like him to be a potential plug and play here. I've said plug and play a lot. The more I think about it, like, I know I shouldn't be doing that, especially, again, with an offensive line that is going through so many changes and so many new faces, that nobody should be a plug and play. Not Fautanu, not Coleman, not anyone. But he's the closest thing to it. him and Fautanu, to me, are the closest things to plug and play. And Fautanu definitely has an edge because he did play significant snaps last year and had quite a. I don't know if he missed a start. I would need to check my notes. I don't know that he missed a start. He certainly played the vast majority of the snaps for the team. So having those two back, having those two in the folds is going to hopefully bring you some stability along the offensive line. And as long as there's stability on the offensive line, then the run game is going to get going for Cameron Skattebo, Raleek Brown, and some of the other guys in the backfield that should be able to help produce in big ways. And we're going to talk about one of those guys here in just a moment. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. There are 3 more games in the NFL season right now, but there's still time to get on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app's easy to use, and there's so many different ways you can bet. There's live same-game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find those popular parlays and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, as always, and making us your first listen of the day. Wherever you're getting your podcast, hit like, subscribe, turn on those notifications because my everydayers are getting a shout out, and I would love for you guys to become an everydayer as well. If you're looking for more sports content, then you need to check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. They're going to get you caught up with all the big news that's going on right now, including Vic Fangio joining the Philadelphia Eagles staff. So check it out, stay up to date, put it on while you're trying to find something while you're eating your dinner. Let's get back into our conversation now. We're going to talk about one of the running backs that is kind of getting slept on here, and it's a shame because this guy really, really looked good last year, and that's DeCarlos Brooks. DeCarlos Brooks, unfortunately, was another guy who was banged up throughout the year. He only played 5 games last year, but in those 5 games, he had 259 yards and 5.4 yards per carry. He did have 3 touchdowns. However, they all came in the Wazoo game, so he had a hat trick. He was a beast, man. He had 1 game where he had 3 yards per carry against Oklahoma State, and he was banged up in that game. Otherwise, Southern Utah, 5.3. Washington, 6.3. Wazoo, 6.1. Arizona, 6.5. He got the ball. And 3 of those 5 games, he was double digits. Keep in mind, this is RB2. This is RB2 behind Cameron Skattebo. And Skattebo was so much better. He was already really good, but he was so much better when DeCarlos Brooks was on the field to be able to open up those opportunities for him because you had thunder and more thunder. And those guys would just break the will of opposing defenses. They both ran so hard, so effectively. Having DeCarlos Brooks back is going to be able to get that run game back on track. Here's my thinking with it. You have Skattebo back for some good thunder and a guy who is just be able to create after contact, right? But you're adding Raleek Brown too, and Raleek Brown is lightning in a bottle. So you have your thunder and lightning. You're able to get Raleek Brown the ball in more ways than one. You're able to get Cameron Skattebo the ball in more ways than one. Having those kind of players that are really able to open up all sorts of different opportunities for your team, so many different avenues that you can go down. It is really going to help get this offense back on track. And look, you've got plenty of weapons in the backfield. Skattebo, Brooks, Raleek Brown, right? You got Tyson Brown coming back. Right now, Tevin White is on the team. I don't really know what the plan is for him as of right now. Jason Brown is coming in as a freshman. There is no shortage of running backs, and there's no shortage of competition. But with that being said, if DeCarlos Brooks is healthy, he has proven why he deserves to be on the field. He has proven that he deserves significant amount of touches when on the field. I don't really know what the receptions is going to look like for him. He had 7 in those 5 games, so not necessarily like getting the ball a lot, but I also just don't know that those opportunities are going to present themselves because of Skattebo and Raleek Brown's prowess to be receiving options out of the backfield. And I mean, Raleek can line up at receiver. That's what USC was doing with him all over the place. So when I look at DeCarlos Brooks, I don't think that there's going to be a lot of receiving opportunity for him. But what that does mean is he is your change of pace guy. And the reason why I would call him the change of pace instead of Raleek or Skattebo, depending on how RB1, RB2 shakes out, is because I foresee both of them on the field pretty consistently. And that's something I'm sure we'll talk about down the road too, is what we can expect from the offense moving forward. But I don't know, man. I see a lot of situations where Skattebo and Raleek Brown are on the field at the exact same time, which means when it's time to pull them off, that's DeCarlos Brooks coming in. And DeCarlos Brooks will come in to spell those guys, to give them a break, let them get some oxygen and some water and sit under a fan or something, depending on how hot it is outside. Then DeCarlos Brooks comes in and he brings thunder. He brings the power. He brings the back-breaking running style at 5'10", 220. He is not fun to tackle. Plus, they lined him up at fullback sometimes last year to be able to continue giving Skattebo those opportunities to be a very good running back. Is they would line Skattebo up as the tailback, and then DeCarlos Brooks would be lined up in front of him, and they just do fullback dives. Like, they got so creative in the ways that they used DeCarlos Brooks. And having that creativity was one of the things that made them such a dynamic team last year when he was on the field. Is your offense was so much smoother when you had DeCarlos Brooks out there. Having him back in the folds should be able to get you right back up the track and up to speed with where you were last year. And as is the caveat for all of these players, it's going to depend on health. And Brooks was banged up last year. But if he's healthy, because that's the point of these lists, is we're talking about the healthy guys, then DeCarlos Brooks is going to be one of the more important players on this team. And you're going to go into the year, and there's a lot of fair weather fans who aren't going to know who DeCarlos Brooks is. And that's okay. Because by the end of the year, people are going to see number 25 come out to the football field, and they're going to go, uh-oh, this guy's going to come out with a big run. He's going to run someone over. He's going to get some goal line carries, whatever it is. They're going to find a way to get the ball into DeCarlos Brooks' hands. And I 100% suspect that once you do that, your offense is just, oh man, it's just running back after running back after running back after running back. And Brooks is just another one of those guys. Like, you have Raleek Brown. You have Cameron Skattebo. You bring in Jason Brown. Tyson Brown is back. And then there's DeCarlos Brooks, who's so easy to get looked over because of all the guys in this backfield. But I promise you, this is a guy that you'll be talking about at the end of the year, and you'll be like, DeCarlos Brooks was an unsung hero. That's what you're going to be saying to yourself because of how good he's going to be. So, yeah, maybe he is 50 carries. Maybe he's 60 carries, 70 carries, whatever it ends up being, however they distribute it. But he's going to be very effective. Maybe he's in the high 4s, 4 yards per carry. Maybe he is in the 5s again. Maybe he is around 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns, whatever it is. But when you consider he's like your third running back, you take that and run. You take that every day of the week and twice on Saturdays. Having him back in the fold is going to be huge for you. And as we talked about yesterday, with Skattebo, with Raleek. Having those depth guys is huge. And with Elijhah Badger, kind of shifting gears here, with Elijhah Badger being your number one receiver, there's plenty of guys behind him who could be massive impact guys as well. We're going to talk about them in just one moment. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. One more time, wherever you're getting your podcast, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications. A shout out to my everydayers who are here every single day. And again, check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube and stay up to date with all the big news that are breaking in pro sports and college sports, all your leagues, all your national shows. It's all there. Check it out. It's the coolest thing ever. First of its kind. We're going to go ahead and wrap up our conversation here with some pass catchers. And before we get that far, I want to shout out Bryce Pierre. I wasn't really sure where to put him on either of these lists, so I left him out, kind of. I still want to bring him up because you lose Jalen Conyers, you lose Messiah Swinson, but Bryce Pierre is coming back, and Bryce Pierre is, without a doubt, your starting number one tight end. And I believe that he could end up being a big-time difference maker for you this year. I would not be surprised if he was one of the top 5 pass catchers on the team, potentially a top 3 pass catcher on the team in terms of volume. He's got lots of potential and all that good stuff. I'm just going to be curious to see how it ends up shaking out for him. But I do want to talk about these 2 wide receivers as guys that are getting overlooked. And it's very easy for them to get overlooked because when you talk about the offense, first guy you think of is Elijhah Badger. 9 out of 10 times. Especially in the wide receiver room, probably 11 out of 10 times. And it's a bummer because it's so... There's so many guys that are just overlooked for the team. And the first guy I want to mention is Troy Omeire. And Omeire tied the team lead in touchdown receptions at 3. And there were some really quality games for him. And he is your big body receiver. He's 6'4", 215 pounds. I almost said 215 yards. He is a great post-up guy. And getting him on the field, to me, needs to be a necessity this year. And there's a lot of talented receivers, and I don't really know how they're all going to shake out. What I do know is Omeire needs to find his way onto the football field. Because when he gets the ball, it feels like there's a big play waiting to happen. I feel like he may not be your yards after the catch guy, but he feels like a 50-50 guy. It feels like you put that ball up and Omeire is going to attack it. He has that my ball mentality. It's not just the size that allows him to box out, but it's that mentality that he brings. It's the, like I said, the my ball mentality. He wants it more than the defensive back does, and he's going to come down with it. Having somebody like him is going to be huge. Plus, you're losing Jalen Conyers, and Conyers is a big, big target for you. So trying to replace him isn't going to be easy. Omeire could be that guy. Bryce Pierre will definitely have the edge at the tight end position, for sure. And I'm a big Bryce Pierre guy. But Troy Omeire, he might be your go-to guy in red zone, at least when it comes to just putting the ball up. Find a way to get the ball to number 9. I think good things are going to happen. The other guy I want to talk about is Jordyn Tyson. Jordyn Tyson is one of the bigger home run threats on this team. Raleek Brown, number 1, I don't think there's any question about it. I'm not sure who you put ahead of Jordyn Tyson. And this is just pure talent here. Like Cameron Skattebo, one of the bigger home run threats, but he feels like he is behind a guy like Jordyn Tyson. And I know that sounds like heresy, especially because he didn't get to play last year because he was dealing with injury. I think he appeared in 3 games last year and didn't really get any opportunities. I don't know that he had any targets or anything like that, but his freshman year at Colorado, dynamic. And Arizona State should know best because he tore up Arizona State. He had an 80-plus yard touchdown reception and an 80-plus yard punt return against Arizona State in 2022. You knew who Jordyn Tyson was by the end of that game. Comes to Arizona State, deals with injury, appears in 3 games. We don't get to see practically anything from him. He's going into this offseason 100% healthy, and I really feel like this is one of your biggest home run guys with Raleek Brown. And there's so many different ways that he can do it. Because at a minimum, you're going to find him a role on special teams. This could potentially alleviate the role of Elijhah Badger being your special teams guy. Because while Badger was really good last year on special teams, he had a couple really big returns. I don't know how much I want to see him out there because of how pivotal he is to your receiving core and the fact that he is your number one receiver. I look at Jordyn Tyson, and I also think that he could be a big-time contributor to your passing offense. However, I think that he's just the guy that you, at the end of the day, want to get the ball to him in any way that you possibly can. I don't know if that's end arounds. I don't know if that's screens, but I do know that it's going to be some deep balls and it's going to be some returning opportunities. He has shown to be able to do a little bit of everything for you. So I'm really looking forward to see how he ends up shaking up into this offense again, into this team, period. Jordyn Tyson is a home run threat. He's got speed you can't teach. He's not a small guy either. I want to say he's like 6'1 or 6'2. Like this is not a gadget receiver. This is somebody that could easily be lined up in more ways than one and have a big time impact for you. And again, he's shown that ability at Colorado. So if he's 100% healthy, and I feel like he's going into this offseason exactly like that, we're going to see a big-time playmaker this year. I'm really excited for Jordyn Tyson. I'm really excited for all these players, honestly. And there's even more guys that I'm excited for. There's plenty of guys on defense that we're going to talk about. And on tomorrow's show, we're going to be talking about the obvious names on the defensive side of the football. Guys like Clayton Smith, guys like Prince Dorbah. We'll be talking about them tomorrow. But then on Friday, we'll be talking about kind of the unsung heroes as well. So if you want to find out who those players are, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications wherever you're getting your podcast. You can stay in touch with your podcast by following me on Twitter. You can find me at Richie Bradshaw36 and the podcast as well at LO_Sun Devils. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. As always, you guys are the best. A shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. And we will be back again tomorrow to talk about the most obvious big names on the defensive side of the football. So I'll see you then. And until then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.